Right now, Marcus is on his knees, scrubbing a coffee stain off my office floor. He is a janitor. I am his CEO. He does not even dare to look at my shoes. 1 year ago, this same man threw my life into black trash bags. He tossed them onto the lawn like garbage. He called my father on speaker. He told him to pick up his worthless daughter. He called me dead weight. Marcus thought he was a self-made king. He forgot who gave him his first million. He forgot whose name was on the house deed. He was playing a game. But he did not know. I owned the entire board. In exactly 15 minutes. A Rolls Royce will pull up. And Marcus will realize he did not just lose a wife. He lost everything. This is how I broke a monster. Come pick up your worthless daughter. Right now. Marcus's voice was a serrated blade. It cut through the thin, cold morning air. He held his phone like a weapon. The speaker was turned to maximum volume. The static from the line crackled. It was the only sound in the suffocating silence of our driveway. I stood on the porch. My arms were wrapped tightly around my chest. Not for warmth, but to keep myself from falling apart. At my feet, the lawn was no longer a manicured green carpet. It was a graveyard of black plastic. 7 heavy trash bags. Overstuffed, bulging, they sat on the damp grass like giant, shiny insects. My entire life was inside those bags. My favorite silk dresses. My grandmother's pearls. My old journals. Everything I owned had been reduced to refuse. Marcus did not look at me. He looked at the phone. His face was flushed with a dark, toxic triumph. He was a man who had finally unmasked himself. The husband I had supported for 5 years was gone. In his place stood a stranger, a monster with cold eyes and a heart of stone. Pick her up before I call the city to haul her away. Marcus spat the words. He leaned against the doorframe of the house my father bought for us. He looked at his watch, an expensive gold piece I gave him for our 3rd anniversary. It glittered under the dull gray sky. You have 15 minutes, Elijah. After that, she is the street's problem, not mine. He ended the call with a sharp click. The silence that followed was heavy. It felt like lead in my lungs. I looked at the trash bags. A small corner of a white lace blouse was poking out of a rip in the plastic. It was the blouse I wore the day Marcus proposed to me. Now it was touching the mud. How did we get here? The question hummed in my brain. It was a low, constant vibration of pain. Just 3 hours ago, the world was normal. The morning had started with the smell of expensive coffee. The same routine we had followed for years. Marcus had kissed my forehead. He smelled of sandalwood and success. He told me he had a big meeting. He told me he loved me. But when he returned at noon, the air changed. The house felt smaller, darker. He did not say hello. He did not remove his coat. He simply walked into the living room and threw a thick, brown envelope at my face. The edge of the paper caught my cheek. It was a sharp, searing sting. I watched the envelope slide off my lap and hit the floor. The seal of the county court stared back at me. I could not breathe. My heart felt like a trapped bird, beating its wings against my ribs. Sign them, Marcus said. His voice was low. It was the sound of a predator closing in. I am done with this. I am done with you. I looked up at him. I tried to find the man I loved. I looked for a trace of the Marcus who used to hold me when I had nightmares. There was nothing. His eyes were empty. They were 2 black holes. Why? I whispered. My voice sounded small. It sounded like it belonged to a child. Marcus laughed. It was a dry, hollow sound. It echoed off the high ceilings of our foyer. Because I am a king now, Simone. Look at this house. Look at my car. Look at my company. I have reached the top of the mountain. And when a king reaches the top, he realizes he is carrying dead weight. He stepped closer. He smelled of adrenaline and something else. A perfume I did not recognize. It was floral, heavy. It was the scent of betrayal. You are a boring housewife, Simone. You are a ghost. You sit in these 4 walls and wait for me. I need a woman who can stand beside me at the gala. I need a woman who knows the difference between a vintage wine and a cheap bottle. I need Kendra. The name hit me harder than the envelope. Kendra, his lead designer. The woman I had invited into our home for dinner. The woman I had comforted when she cried about her own failed marriage. The pieces of the puzzle fell into place with a sickening thud. The late nights. The secret phone calls. The coldness. It was all for her. Marcus did not wait for me to speak. He moved with a sudden, violent energy. He marched into our primary bedroom. I followed him. My legs felt like they were made of water. I watched as he ripped open the closet doors. The sound of the wood hitting the wall was like a gunshot. He didn't use suitcases. He went to the kitchen and grabbed the heavy-duty trash bags. He started grabbing my clothes. Handfuls of silk, cashmere, wool. He didn't care about the fabric. He didn't care about the memories. He stuffed them into the black plastic with a savage fury. "Stop, please," I begged. I reached for his arm. He pushed me away. It wasn't a hit. It was a shove. A gesture of pure disdain. As if I were a smudge of dirt on his expensive suit. "Get back," he growled. "Don't touch me with those hands. You haven't worked a day in your life. You have lived off my sweat for long enough." I stood in the corner of the room. I watched him destroy our life. He swept my cosmetics off the vanity. The glass bottles of perfume shattered on the floor. The air became thick with the scent of jasmine and roses. It was the smell of my wedding day. It was suffocating. He dragged the bags down the hallway. Thump, thump, thump. Each sound was a heartbeat. He opened the front door and began to hurl them onto the lawn, one by one. He threw my identity into the dirt. He didn't care that the neighbors were watching. He didn't care that the Mrs. Higgins next door was peering through her curtains. He wanted the world to see my shame. When the last bag hit the grass, he turned to me. He was breathing hard. He looked proud. He looked like he had just won a war. He pulled out his phone. He looked at me with a cruel, twisted smile. "Let's see if your father still thinks you are a princess." He said, "That brings us back to now. To this porch, to the cold, biting wind." Marcus stood there, smug. He believed he was the architect of my ruin. He believed he had stripped me of everything. He thought he was the one with the power. But as I stood there, looking at the black bags on the lawn, a strange, cold calm began to wash over me. The pain was still there. But beneath it, something else was waking up. A memory of who I was before I became Marcus's wife. He didn't know about the secret safe in the basement. He didn't know about the documents my father made me sign on our wedding day. He didn't know that the ground he was standing on was not his. He had been so blinded by his own greed. He had forgotten to check the foundation of his palace. Marcus looked at his watch again. 14 minutes. He sneered. He took a step back into the house and began to close the door. "Better get to the curb, Simone. I don't want you on my property when the clock strikes 0. I didn't move. I didn't cry. I simply looked at him. The sound of a powerful engine began to rumble in the distance. It wasn't one car. It was several. The sound grew louder. It was a deep, intimidating roar that vibrated in the ground beneath my feet. Marcus stopped closing the door. He frowned. He looked toward the gate of the community. A flash of chrome appeared at the end of the street. Then a black sedan, long and sleek. A Rolls-Royce Ghost. It glided toward the house like a silent shark. Behind it, 2 massive black SUVs followed. Their windows were tinted. Their presence was a warning. Marcus's face changed. The smugness flickered. For a second, I saw a spark of fear in his eyes. He didn't recognize the cars, but he recognized the power they radiated. The convoy didn't slow down. It pulled up to the curb, directly in front of the trash bags. The engines cut off simultaneously. The silence that followed was terrifying. Marcus stepped out onto the porch again. He tried to puff out his chest. He tried to regain his mask of arrogance, but his hands were trembling. I didn't look at Marcus. I looked at the lead car. The door opened. A man stepped out. He was tall. He wore a charcoal suit that cost more than Marcus's entire company. His hair was silver. His face was a mask of granite. It was my father. Elijah Hayes dawdled beside him. 3 men in black suits stepped out of the SUVs. They stood like statues. Their eyes were hidden behind dark glasses. One of them held a leather folder. Marcus swallowed hard. I could hear the click of his throat from where I stood. "Mr. Hayes." Marcus called out. His voice was higher now. It lacked the serrated edge. "You are early. I told you, 15 minutes. My father did not answer. He didn't even look at Marcus. He walked straight toward me. He climbed the stairs of the porch and placed a firm, warm hand on my shoulder. He looked at the cut on my cheek. His eyes didn't show sadness. They showed a cold, calculated rage. "Are you ready to go, Simone?" he asked. His voice was a low rumble. I nodded. "Yes." My father turned around. Finally, he looked at Marcus. He didn't look at him like a man looks at a rival. He looked at him like a man looks at a mosquito. Marcus tried to speak. He tried to find his voice. "This is my house, Elijah. You can't just come here with your security," and my father raised one hand. Marcus stopped. The silence was absolute. "Your house." My father repeated. He looked at the man holding the leather folder. The man stepped forward. He opened the folder and pulled out a single sheet of paper. He handed it to my father, Marcus. My father said, his voice was calm. It was the calmness of a hurricane's eye. "This house was a gift. It was a gift for my daughter. Not for a boy who plays at being a businessman." He held up the paper. "It was the deed. Check the name on the title, Marcus." My father said. Marcus reached for the paper. His fingers were shaking so hard he almost dropped it. He read the lines. His eyes moved back and forth, faster and faster. His face went from red to pale to a sickly, grayish-white. "Simone Hayes," he whispered. My father stepped closer to him. He was taller than Marcus. He was stronger. "You have 10 minutes, Marcus." My father said. 10 minutes for what?" Marcus asked. His voice was a ghost of itself. "To pack your things." My father replied, "Because you are the one leaving. And if you are not off this property by the time the clock strikes 0, my father leaned in. His voice dropped to a whisper. "I will let my men show you exactly how we handle trash in this family. 900 seconds. That was the price Marcus put on our marriage. He stood on the top step of the porch. His polished leather shoes were inches away from the threshold of a home he no longer deserved. He looked down at me. His eyes were not filled with regret. They were filled with a dark, calculated joy. "Tick, tock, Simone," he said. The sound of his voice was a low, grating friction. He held his left arm up. The gold watch on his wrist glittered with a cold, unfeeling light. 900 seconds, then. You are the street's problem. The air around us was stagnant. It smelled of damp earth and the metallic scent of coming rain. I stood on the driveway. My feet were planted on the cold concrete. I could feel the vibration of the distant highway. It was a dull, constant hum, a reminder of the world passing by while my life was being dismantled. Marcus leaned against the white pillar. He looked like a king surveying a fallen kingdom. "You have 850 seconds left," he announced. His voice carried across the quiet neighborhood. It was loud, obscene. He wanted the neighbors to hear. He wanted Mrs. Gable across the street to see my humiliation. I could see her curtain twitching, the silent judgment of a gated community. I looked at the trash bags on the lawn. They looked like black, shiny graves inside them. My identity was suffocating. My silk scarves, my wedding album, the heavy wool coat my mother gave me for my 21st birthday. All of it was being treated like refuse. Marcus laughed. It was a sharp, jagged sound. It cut through the morning mist. "Do you think Elijah is coming, Simone?" He mocked. "Your father is a busy man. Maybe he finally realized you are a bad investment. Just like I did." I did not answer. My throat felt like it was filled with broken glass. I swallowed hard. The silence was my only shield. I watched the second hand of his watch. It's kind of my mind. I could hear it. Click, click, click. Each second was a heartbeat I would never get back. 800 seconds. Marcus checked the time again. He pulled a cigarette from his pocket. The click of the lighter was unnervingly loud. The smell of expensive tobacco filled the air. It was a scent he only started using when he began seeing Kendra. It was a smell of secret meetings and stolen afternoons. I already told Kendra she could have the walk-in closet, he said. He exhaled a cloud of gray smoke. It drifted toward me like a ghost. She said she hated your taste in decor. She called it provincial. We are going to gut this place. Start fresh. No trace of you left behind. The cruelty was a physical weight. It pressed against my chest. I felt the air leaving my lungs. The house was a wedding gift. My father had chosen it for the view of the valley, for the way the light hit the kitchen in the morning. Marcus hadn't paid a single mortgage payment. He hadn't even chosen the paint colors. Yet, here he was, acting like a conqueror. 700 seconds. Marcus stepped down one stair. He was getting closer. The smell of his cologne hit me. It was a heavy, woody scent. It used to make me feel safe. Now it made me want to gag. You look pathetic, Simone, he sneered. Standing there with your bags, waiting for a daddy who probably changed his phone number. If he doesn't show up in 600 seconds, I am going to enjoy the next part. He pointed toward the end of the driveway. The main road was a quarter-mile away. I am going to drag each of these bags to the highway's shoulder, he said. His eyes sparkled with a sick anticipation. And then, I am going to drag you. I will leave you there, under the sign for the exit, right where the trash belongs. The physical threat didn't scare me as much as the realization of his hatred. How long had he hidden this? How long had he looked at me and seen something to be discarded? We had shared a bed. We had shared secrets. Or so I thought. 500 seconds. The sky was getting darker. A low rumble of thunder moved through the valley. The wind picked up. It caught the edges of the plastic bags, making them rustle. It was a dry, whispering sound, like 1,000 tiny voices mocking me. Marcus checked his watch again. He was restless now. He paced the porch. His footsteps were heavy, rhythmic. Thud, thud, thud. Maybe I should start moving the bags now, he mused. Save myself some time. You have 400 seconds. Elijah is officially late in my book. I looked at the gate at the end of the street. It was closed. A silent iron barrier. There were no cars, no sirens, just the empty gray pavement. My heart began to falter. Was Marcus right? Had my father decided that this was a lesson I needed to learn alone? 400 seconds. The cold was moving deeper into my bones. I was wearing a thin sweater. It was a gift from Marcus. 3 years ago, he had told me I looked like an angel in it. Now it was a rag, a reminder of a lie. Do you remember the night we bought this house? Marcus asked. His voice was suddenly soft. But it wasn't kind. It was a trap. You cried? You said you were the luckiest woman in the world. I was laughing inside. Even then, I knew you were just a stepping stone. He stepped off the porch. He was on the grass now. He walked to the first bag. He kicked it. The sound was a dull, wet thump. My grandmother's porcelain frame was in that bag. I heard a faint, heartbreaking crack. 300 seconds. Marcus was standing in the middle of the lawn. He looked like a giant in the gray light. 200 seconds and I start dragging, he warned. I hope you like the smell of diesel exhaust, Simone, because the highway is going to be your new home. I closed my eyes. I focused on the sound of my own breathing. In, out, in, out. I refused to let him see me break. I refused to give him the satisfaction of a tear. I was a haze. We did not break. We endured 200 seconds. Marcus grabbed the top of the largest bag. He began to pull it. The plastic dragged across the damp grass. SSSSS's. It was a long, hissing sound. like a snake moving through the brush. He moved it toward the curb. "Look at you!" He yelled over his shoulder. Still waiting. Still hoping. "You are a ghost, Simone. You are already dead to me. 100 seconds." He reached the curb. He dropped the bag. It hit the pavement with a heavy final sound. He turned back for the second one. He was sweating now. His face was flushed. 90 seconds. He gasped. He was enjoying the manual labor of my destruction. He grabbed 2 more bags. He was manic. He was a man possessed by the need to humiliate. 50 seconds. The bags were piling up at the edge of the street. A wall of black plastic. A wall between me and my life. Marcus stood by the pile. He was breathing heavily. He looked at his watch. 10, 9, 8. He began to count out loud. 765. He looked at me. A predatory grin stretched across his face. He took a step toward me. His hands were open. Ready to grab my arm? Ready to fulfill his promise. 4, 3, 2. The count stopped. A sound cut through the air. It wasn't the highway. It wasn't the thunder. It was the scream of high-performance tires. The sound of a V12 engine pushed to its limit. Marcus froze. His head snapped toward the gate. The iron bars didn't just open. They retracted with a violent mechanical speed. A black shape appeared at the end of the street. It wasn't driving. It was flying. A Rolls-Royce Ghost. Blacker than the trash bags. Faster than a nightmare. Behind it. 2 Escalades roared in pursuit. Their headlights were a blinding white fury. 0. I whispered. The clock didn't just stop. It shattered. The Rolls-Royce didn't slow down until the last possible second. It skidded to a halt inches from the pile of bags. The smell of burnt rubber replaced the scent of Marcus's tobacco. The SUVs swerved, blocking the entire street. The silence that followed was heavy. It was the silence before a landslide. Marcus stood by the curb. He looked small. His gold watch was hidden in the shadow of the luxury sedan. His mouth was open. But no sound came out. The door of the Rolls-Royce opened. A polished shoe touched the pavement. Then another dot. My father didn't just step out. He emerged. Marcus did not bow. He did not tremble. Not yet. He stood in the center of the damp lawn, surrounded by black plastic bags and the roaring silence of my father's arrival. He looked at the Rolls-Royce. He looked at the men in black suits. And then he smiled. It was a smile of pure, unadulterated arrogance. "You think this intimidates me, Elijah?" Marcus called out. His voice was steady. Steady. He was a man drunk on his own reflection. He was a man who believed his own lies. He straightened his silk tie. The fabric caught the dull light of the morning. It was a deep blood red. "I am not the boy who came to you 5 years ago," Marcus said. He paced a small circle on the grass. His shoes left dark, bruised marks on the lawn. "I have built an empire. Wallace Logistics is the fastest growing firm in the tri-state area. I have 500 employees. I have contracts with the biggest names in the country. I did that." He pointed a finger at his own chest. The movement was sharp, violent. Me, I spent the 18-hour days. I made the calls no one else would make. I closed the deals while your daughter was busy choosing curtains for a house I would eventually outgrow. The air was thick with the smell of ozone and the heavy, sweet scent of his arrogance. It was like a physical weight. I watched him. My heart was cold. It felt like a stone in my chest. I looked at the man I thought I knew. He looked like a stranger wearing a dead man's face. "You talk about legacy, Elijah?" Marcus sneered. He turned his gaze to my father. My father stood perfectly still. He was a statue of charcoal and granite. He did not blink. He did not speak. He let Marcus dig his own grave with a golden shovel. Legacy is for people who are afraid to work. Marcus continued. His voice was rising now. It was a sermon of greed. "I am a self-made man. I started with nothing, and now I have everything. I am the king of my own mountain. And a king does not ask for permission to change his queen. He turned to me. His eyes were narrow. They were cold, glacial. You think you're special because of your name, Simone? But your name is just letters on a page. I am the one who put the power behind it. I am the one who made Wallace's Logistics a name that people fear. He stepped closer to me. The smell of his expensive tobacco and woodsy cologne washed over me. It was the scent of my betrayal. It was the smell of every lie he had told me over the last year. And let's talk about the red Ferrari, Simone, he whispered. His voice was a low, poisonous hiss. The 812 superfast teat. Do you remember when it arrived? The red paint was like fresh blood. The engine roared like a caged beast. You told me it was too much. You told me we should be humble. He laughed. It was a dry, hollow sound. It made my skin crawl. I bought that car with company funds, Marcus said. He leaned in so close I could see the tiny, broken veins in his eyes. It was a $400,000 toy. And do you know the best part? You signed the requisition form. I felt the blood drain from my face. My knees felt weak. You were so busy playing the supportive wife. Marcus mocked. You were so happy that your husband was successful. You signed every paper I put in front of you. You didn't even read them. You signed for the Ferrari. You signed for the insurance. You even signed for the custom leather interior. He reached out and flicked a stray hair from my shoulder. The touch was repulsive. It felt like a spider crawling on my skin. I used that car to take Kendra to the city. He said, the leather smells like her perfume now. Not yours. You paid for my mistress's comfort. Simone, you signed the check for your own replacement. I looked at him. My vision was blurred by a sudden sharp heat. The betrayal was not just in the affair. It was in the calculated way he had used my trust. He had turned my love into a weapon against me. He had made me an accomplice in my own humiliation. Marcus turned back to my father. He looked triumphant. He looked like a man who had already won the war. So you see, Elijah, your daughter is not just dead weight. She was a very useful tool, but the tool is broken now, and I am moving on. You can take your Rolls Royce and your guards, and you can take her. I have a company to run. I have a life to live. And I have a Ferrari waiting for me in the garage. He turned his back on us. He started to walk toward the house. He walked with a swagger, a confident, rhythmic bounce. He thought he was untouchable. He thought he had outsmarted the Hayes family. But Marcus had forgotten one thing. He had forgotten who had signed the initial investment checks. He had forgotten whose name was on the corporate charter. He had forgotten that every brick of his empire was built on ground that he did not own. My father finally spoke. His voice was not loud, but it carried the weight of a mountain, Marcus. He said not Marcus stopped. He didn't turn around immediately. He paused, letting the silence stretch. Then he slowly pivoted, a bored, annoyed expression on his face. Yes, Elijah, what now? Are you going to offer me a settlement? Because the price just went up. My father stepped off the porch. He walked toward Marcus. He didn't rush. He moved with a terrifying, deliberate grace. The men in black suits followed him. Their footsteps were perfectly synchronized. A drumbeat of doom. You mentioned Wallace Logistics. My father said. Marcus crossed his arms. My company. He corrected. My father reached into the leather folder held by the man beside him. He pulled out a document. It was old. The edges were slightly yellowed. Do you remember 5 years ago, Marcus? My father asked. When you were a salesman with a dream and a hole in your shoe. Marcus's face tightened. The arrogance flickered for a fraction of a second. I remember working hard. He snapped. You remember me giving you $5 million. My father said. His voice was a cold, sharp knife. You remember me giving you the contacts you needed to get your first shipment? You remember me giving you the office space in the downtown tower? Marcus laughed. Alone, he said. Which I paid back with interest. I am a self-made man. My father shook his head. No, Marcus, you are a man who doesn't read the fine print. He held up the yellowed document. This is the original. Partnership agreement. My father said, the $5 million was not a loan. It was an equity investment. In the name of the Matriarch's trust. Marcus's eyes narrowed. So what? You own a piece of the company. Big deal. I'm the CEO. I have the voting rights. My father smiled. It was a cold, predatory smile. It was the smile of a man who had been waiting 5 years to close a trap. Read the third paragraph. Marcus, my father said. The one about moral turpitude and the protection of the Hayes legacy. He handed the document to Marcus. Marcus grabbed it. He started to read. I watched his face. The heat of his arrogance was being replaced by a sudden, chilling cold. His eyes moved back and forth, faster and faster. The paper began to rustle in his hands. He was shaking, it says here. Marcus whispered. His voice was thin. It was a thread. It says. My father interrupted. That in the event of a divorce, or any action that brings dishonor to the Hayes name, the trust has the right to buy back your shares at their original par value, $1 per share. Marcus, my father said. Marcus looked up. His face was a mask of horror. That's impossible. The company is worth $80 million, not to you. My father said, to you? It is worth exactly what you put into it. Nothing. Marcus looked at the paper. Then he looked at the red Ferrari parked in the driveway. The car he had bragged about? The car he had used to humiliate me, and about the Ferrari. My father said. He looked at the man with the leather folder. The man stepped forward. He held a small black device. He pressed a button. The lights of the Ferrari flashed once, twice. High-pitched, digital, chirp, echoed. Through the morning that the company funds you used were flagged by the audit team 3 weeks ago. My father said, the car has been repossessed by the trust. The doors are locked. The engine is disabled. Marcus ran toward the car. He grabbed the door handle. He pulled. It didn't move. He pounded on the window with his fist. The glass was thick, unyielding. That's my car. He screamed. His voice was cracking. It was the sound of a man losing his mind. I earned that car. The iron gate didn't just open, it surrendered. The sound of grinding metal echoed through the damp morning air. It was the sound of an ending. Marcus stopped screaming. His mouth remained open, but the insults had died in his throat. The tires of the lead SUV bit into the wet asphalt. A screech that set my teeth on edge. The smell of burnt rubber and hot brake pads filled the air. It was a sharp, acrid scent. It cut through the smell of Marcus's expensive tobacco. Then the doors of the black Cadillac Escalades opened. In perfect unison, thud, 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 thud. 6 men stepped out. They were giants. Their suits were the color of midnight. Their movements were not human. They were machines. They did not look at Marcus. They did not look at the house. They looked at the perimeter. Their eyes were hidden behind, dark, opaque. Glasses, they moved with a terrifying military precision. The silence that followed was not empty. It was heavy. It was a physical weight that pressed down on the driveway. The birds in the oak trees stopped chirping. The distant hum of the highway seemed to fade away. Even the wind stopped rustling the black trash bags on the lawn. It was the kind of silence that precedes a landslide. Marcus tried to find his voice. It came out as a pathetic, high-pitched squawk. What is this? You can't park here. He pointed a trembling finger at the first SUV. This is a private community. I will have you towed. Do you hear me? None of the men moved. They stood like pillars of obsidian. Their presence turned the warm, gated neighborhood into a war zone. I could feel the cold radiating from their stillness. It was a professional cold, a lethal cold. The physical sensation was like stepping into a freezer. My chest felt tight. My breath came in short, shallow, bursts. Then the Rolls-Royce glided forward. It moved like a shadow on water. It didn't make a sound. The spirit of ecstasy on the hood glittered under the gray sky. a silver ghost leading a funeral procession. It stopped exactly 3 feet from Marcus Dot. The engine didn't die. It hummed, a low, deep vibration that shook the gravel. I could feel it in my marrow. Marcus took a step back. His heels hit the edge of a trash bag. He stumbled. His arrogance was leaking out of him like air from a punctured tire. "You is in there?" Marcus screamed. His voice was cracking now. It was the sound of a man drowning in his own fear. "I am calling the police. You hear me? I have connections in this city." He was shouting into a void. The tinted windows of the Rolls-Royce were like mirrors, reflecting his own distorted, panicked face. He looked small. He looked like a child throwing a tantrum in the shadow of a mountain. Suddenly, the driver of the Rolls-Royce stepped out. It was Darius, my father's head of security. He was a man with a face like a scarred cliff. He walked around the rear of the car. His footsteps were silent on the wet pavement. He reached for the handle of the passenger door. He didn't open it immediately. He waited. He let the tension build. He let the silence crush the last bit of Marcus's pride. Marcus was panting now. The cold air made his breath come out in white, ragged clouds. He clutched his gold watch, as if the expensive metal could protect him from the tidal wave that was about to hit. "I'm the CEO of Wallace Logistics," he bellowed. "You can't treat me like this on my own property." Darius pulled the door open. The silence deepened. It was as if the world held its breath. The smell of expensive leather, aged cedar, and old money drifted out of the car. It was the scent of my childhood, the scent of a power that didn't need to scream to be heard. My father stepped out. He didn't rush. He moved with a slow, deliberate grace. His charcoal suit was flawless. Not a single wrinkle despite the long drive. His silver hair caught the gray morning light. He stood tall. His shoulders were broad. His presence filled the entire driveway. The shadow of the Rolls-Royce seemed to stretch out, swallowing Marcus's whole. Marcus stopped screaming. The silence was now absolute. My father didn't look at Marcus. He didn't look at the house. He looked at me. His eyes were the color of a winter sky, hard, clear, ancient. He saw the cut on my cheek. He saw the trash bags at my feet. I saw his jaw tighten. A small, dangerous movement. That was the only sign of his rage. "But it was enough, Simone," he said. His voice was a low, cultivated rumble. It was the sound of rolling thunder in the distance. It made Marcus's screaming seem like a distant, annoying buzzing of an insect. "Father," I whispered. My voice finally returned. It felt like the first real breath I had taken in years. Marcus tried to reclaim the narrative. He stepped forward. His face was a mask of sweat and desperation. "Elijah, good. You're here. Take your daughter. She's been a burden long enough. And tell your goons to move these cars. I have a company to run. This is a business day." My father slowly turned his head. He looked at Marcus. He didn't look at him with anger. He looked at him with an icy, detached curiosity, as if he were looking at a bug under a microscope. Marcus faltered. He stopped mid-sentence. The look in my father's eyes was a death sentence for his ego. The silence between them was a battlefield. "A company," my father repeated. The word was a slow, heavy stone dropped into a deep well. "You think you have a company, Marcus?" I built Wallace Logistics." Marcus stammered. He tried to puff out his chest, but his shoulders were slumped. His red tie was crooked. "I am the CEO. I have contracts. I have power in this town." My father took a single step toward him. The 6 security guards moved forward in unison. A black wall of meat and muscle closing in. The sound of their boots on the asphalt was like a heartbeat. "You have nothing?" my father said. His voice was quiet, but it filled every corner of the yard. It echoed off the walls of the house Marcus thought he owned. "You have a name on a piece of paper that I am about to shred. You have a house that I bought for my daughter's happiness. You have a car that I leased through a shell company. And you have a mistress who is currently packing her bags because she knows the ship is sinking." Marcus's mouth worked, but no sound came out. He looked like a fish gasping for air on a dry dock. The smell of the damp grass and the ozone from the cars was overwhelming. "You called my daughter trash," my father said. He was now inches from Marcus. The contrast was devastating. Marcus was sweating, red-faced, disheveled. My father was cool, flawless, powerful. "You threw her life onto the grass. You thought she was alone in this world?" My father leaned in. His voice dropped to a whisper that echoed in the heavy silence. "I am going to show you what happens to people who touch what is mine. I am going to erase you, Marcus. By the time the sun sets, no one in this city will remember your name. You wanted a divorce? I am going to give you a total liquidation." Marcus took a step back. He tripped over the same trash bag again. This time, he fell. He landed hard on his rear in the damp grass. He looked up at my father. He looked up at the 6 giants in black suits. He looked at the long, dark shadow of the Rolls-Royce stretching across the lawn like a shroud. That silence was no longer heavy. It was a tomb. My father looked at Darius. He didn't need to speak. The communication was silent. Absolute. Darius nodded. He signaled to the men. "Wait," Marcus yelped. He scrambled backward on his hands and knees. "We can talk about this." I was upset. Simone and I were just having a disagreement. It's a marriage thing. "Elijah, you understand how women can be." My father didn't answer. He turned his back on Marcus. The ultimate insult. He walked toward me. He took my hand. His skin was warm, steady. He led me toward the Rolls-Royce. "Darius." My father said over his shoulder. "Yes, sir." "Clean up the yard," my father said, "starting with the biggest piece of garbage." Darius stepped toward Marcus. The other guards moved in a circle around him. Marcus began to scream again. But this time, it wasn't the scream of a king. It was the scream of a man who realized he was standing at the edge of an abyss. I stepped into the back of the Rolls-Royce. The door closed with a soft, vault-like click. The outside world vanished. The screaming stopped. The rain began to fall, washing the blood-red tie of a self-made man into the mud. My house. My rules. My victory. The rain began to fall in earnest now. It was a cold, needle-like drizzle. It drummed against the roof of the Rolls-Royce. The sound was a rhythmic, hollow thumping, like the beating of a heavy heart. Inside the car, the air was warm and smelled of expensive sandalwood. Outside, Marcus was kneeling in the mud. He looked like a broken statue. I didn't stay in the car. I didn't want to be a spectator in my own life. I pushed the door open. The cold air hit my face like a slap. It was refreshing. I stepped out onto the wet asphalt. My heels clicked against the ground. A sharp, defiant sound. Darius stepped aside. He held a large, black umbrella over my head. The silk fabric hissed as the rain hit it. I didn't look at my father. I didn't look at the guards. My eyes were locked on Marcus. He was shivering. His expensive suit was ruined. The shoulders were stained with dark, wet patches. His red tie was dipped in a puddle. He looked up at me. His eyes were wide. They were filled with a desperate, feral hunger. He was still trying to find a way to win. "Simone," he croaked. His voice was raw. "Tell them. Tell your father he can't do this. We're married. What's mine is yours, and what's yours is mine. This is our home. We built this life." I didn't answer him right away. I let the silence stretch. I wanted him to feel the weight of the neighborhood's eyes. I looked past him. I saw the curtains moving in every window. Mrs. Higgins, the Gables, the Stir. They were all watching. They were watching the King of Wallace Logistics crumble into the dirt. The smell of wet asphalt and ozone was overwhelming. I reached out my hand. Darius placed a thick manila folder into my palm. The paper was heavy. It felt like it held the weight of the last 5 years. I walked toward Marcus. Every step was deliberate. Every step was a reclaiming of my power. I stopped a foot away from him. I looked down. From this height, he looked small. He looked like the trash bags he had thrown onto my lawn. "You kept talking about your empire, Marcus," I said. My voice was calm. It was a low, cinematic rumble. It carried through the rain. "You kept talking about how you built this mountain. You told me I was dead weight." I flipped open the folder. The sound of the paper snapping in the wind was like a gunshot. I pulled out the original deed to the house. It was a crisp, white document. The ink was dark and permanent. "Do you remember our wedding day?" I asked. Marcus blinked. Rain ran down his forehead and into his eyes. Of course, it was the best day of my life. The lie was oily. It was transparent. You told me that house was too big for us. I said, "You told me we didn't need a mansion." But my father insisted. He said his daughter would never live in a cage. I held the document in front of his face. I didn't give it to him. Not yet. I wanted him to read the lines. I wanted the words to burn into his retinas. "Read the line under legal grantee," I commanded. Marcus leaned forward. He squinted through the rain. His lips moved as he read the words. His face went from a pale gray to a ghostly white. "Simone Hayes?" he whispered. "Only Simone Hayes." I corrected him. "Not Marcus Wallace. Not the Wallace Family Trust. Just me. My father didn't give this house to us, Marcus. He gave it to me. It was a premarital asset, protected, untouchable." I saw the realization hit him. It was a physical blow. His shoulders slumped. He looked at the house. The grand stone, pillar of his success. He looked at the floor-to-ceiling windows where he had planned to host his parties. "But I paid the taxes," Marcus stammered. He was grasping at straws. He was drowning. "I paid for the landscaping. I paid for the security system. Under the law of equity. You were a tenant." I interrupted. My voice was sharp. It was a blade of ice. "A tenant who didn't even pay rent. You used your company funds to pay the bills. The same company funds that my father's audit team just seized." I pulled the document back and folded it. I tapped it against my chin. "You see, Marcus? While you were busy taking Kendra to luxury hotels, I was busy reading the contracts. While you were bragging about your Ferrari, I was studying the fine print of the Wallace Logistics Charter. You thought I was a boring housewife. You thought I was a ghost." I leaned down. I was so close I could smell the stale tobacco on his breath. I could see the terror in the depths of his pupils. "A ghost can't sign an eviction notice," I whispered. "But a landlord can." I reached into the folder again and pulled out a second paper. It was a formal legal notice. It had the county seal at the top. I didn't hand it to him. I dropped it. The paper fluttered through the air. It landed in the mud, right next to his knee. "That is a notice to quit," I said. "It gives you 0 hours, because you have already violated the terms of the guest agreement. You committed an act of domestic disturbance when you threw my belongings onto the lawn. You made this a crime scene, not a home." Marcus looked at the paper in the mud. He looked at the red tie soaking in the dirty water. He looked at the 6 security guards who were now moving closer. Their presence was a shadow that swallowed the light. "Simone, please." Marcus sobbed. He reached for the hem of my coat. I stepped back. The movement was instinctive. I didn't want his touch to stain me. "Don't," I said. The word was a wall. I turned back to the house. I looked at the front door. The door Marcus had slammed in my face. The door he had stood behind while he called me trash. "Darius?" I called out. "Yes, Miss Hayes." "Change the locks," I said. "Every single one. Biometric, digital, mechanical. I want the codes wiped. I want the master keys destroyed." I looked at the trash bags on the lawn. "And these bags," I said, "put 'em back in the house. In the master bedroom. My things are going back where they belong." Marcus scrambled to his feet. He was slipping in the mud. He looked like a wounded animal. "What about my things? My suits? My watch collection? My documents?" I smiled. It was the first time I had smiled all morning. It was a cold, predatory expression. "If your things are in the garage, Marcus," I said, I had the staff pack them while you were busy counting down the 900 seconds. I didn't use trash bags. I used the cheap cardboard boxes from the basement, the ones with a damp smell. I pointed to the end of the driveway. A single, small pickup truck was parked there. It was old. The engine was rattling. In the back, a few brown boxes were stacked carelessly. "That is your ride," I said. "The driver is paid to take you to the nearest motel. A 1-star establishment. I believe it matches your current net worth." Marcus looked at the truck. Then he looked at the Rolls-Royce. The contrast was a cruel, perfect joke. "You can't do this," he yelled. He tried to run toward the house. He didn't get 3 steps. Darius moved with the speed of a striking snake. He didn't hit Marcus. He simply intercepted him. He grabbed Marcus's arm and twisted it behind his back. The sound of Marcus's breath leaving his lungs was a sharp, wet gasp. "The lady gave you an instruction," Chaos said. His voice was a low, grinding stone. "It is time to leave." The other guards closed in. They formed a human corridor, a path of shame that led from the porch to the rattling pickup truck. I stood under my umbrella. I watched as they dragged him away. Marcus was screaming my name. He was cursing. He was begging. The neighbors were now standing on their porches. They were recording with their phones. The king of Wallace Logistics was being evicted in front of the whole world. My father stepped up beside me. He didn't say anything. He just put his arm around my shoulder. He was a pillar of strength. I watched as they shoved Marcus into the cab of the truck. The driver didn't wait. He shifted into gear. The truck pulled away, leaving a cloud of blue smoke and the smell of cheap gasoline in the air. The silence returned, but it was different now. It wasn't the silence of a victim. It was the silence of a victor. I looked at the house. "My house, Father." I said, double quotes, "Yes, Simone." "I want the Ferrari towed," I said. "Sell it. Give the money to a women's shelter. I don't want anything in my life that Marcus touched." My father nodded. "Consider it done." Started to walk toward the house. My heels clicked on the stone steps. Every sound was a victory lap. I reached the door. Paused. I looked back at the neighborhood. The rain was starting to let up. A sliver of light was breaking through the gray clouds. But as I reached for the handle, I heard a phone ringing. It wasn't my phone. It was Marcus's. He had dropped it in the mud. I walked back down the steps. I picked up the device. The screen was cracked, but the caller ID was clear. Kendra. I looked at the screen. A micro cliffhanger of a thought crossed my mind. Kendra didn't know yet. She didn't know the ship had sunk. She thought she was about to move into a mansion. I swiped the screen. I put the phone to my ear. "Hello, Kendra," I said. My voice was like honey. The silence on the other end was a scream of its own. "Hello, Kendra." The silence on the other end of the line was not just empty. It was heavy. It was a suffocating liquid silence. I could hear her breathing. It was a shallow, ragged sound, like a cornered animal trying to stay quiet in the dark. I stood in the center of my driveway. The rain was cold. It soaked through my hair and ran down the back of my neck. But I felt like I was made of fire. I looked at the cracked screen of Marcus's phone. The name was still there. Kendra, the woman who thought she was moving into my life today. Simone. She finally whispered. Her voice was thin. It lacked the confidence she used to have when she looked at me across the dinner table. It sounded like it was coming from the bottom of a deep, dark. "Well, where is Marcus? Why do you have his phone?" I looked toward the second-floor window. The master bedroom. The heavy velvet curtains were parted just an inch. I saw a movement, a shadow behind the glass. "I think you know exactly where he is, Kendra," I said. My voice was a low, cinematic rumble. It was the sound of a predator who had already won. "He is exactly where you are about to be. On the outside, looking in." I looked down at the mud. Marcus was being dragged toward the pickup truck by Darius. His legs were limp. His red tie was trailing in the dirt like a wounded snake. He wasn't fighting anymore. He was a broken man. "He told me it was his house," Kendra stammered. I could hear the sound of a zipper. a sharp, metallic, teeth-grinding noise. He told me he owned Wallace Logistics. He said your father was just a silent partner with no real power. I laughed. It was a dry, hollow sound that echoed off the stone walls of the mansion. Kessis is a very good storyteller. Kendra, I said. But he forgot the most important rule of the Hayes family. We don't just own the company. We own the ground you are standing on. We own the air you are breathing in that room. I started walking toward the front door. My heels clicked against the wet stone. A drumbeat of finality. Darius held the umbrella over me. His presence was a silent, black wall of protection. "What are you doing?" Kendra asked. The panic was rising in her voice. I heard the thud of a heavy suitcase hitting the floor. "You can't come in here. I have rights." "You have the right to be silent, Kendra," I said. "And you have exactly 5 minutes to get your things out of my bedroom before my security team clears the floor. I don't care what you take, because everything in that house has already been cataloged." I reached the front door. I didn't need a key. The new biometric lock recognized my thumbprint with a soft, electronic chirp. The door swung open. The house smelled of her. It was a thick, cloaking scent of cheap floral perfume. It fought against the clean sandalwood aroma of my home. It was the smell of a stranger in my sanctuary. I walked into the foyer. The high ceilings made every sound echo. The house felt cold. It felt like it was holding its breath. I looked up at the grand staircase. Kendra was standing at the top. She wasn't the polished designer I remembered. Her hair was a mess. Her eyes were red. She was wearing one of my silk robes, a deep emerald green. It was a gift from my mother. Seeing it on her made my blood turn to ice. She was holding 2 large suitcases. They were bulging at the seams. I saw the edge of a designer dress poking out. "One of mine? You're a monster," Kendra spat. She gripped the railing so hard her knuckles were white. "You're taking everything from him. He worked for years to build that life." I climbed the first step, slowly, deliberately. "He didn't build anything, Kendra." I said. "He borrowed it. He borrowed my father's money. He borrowed my name. And he borrowed you to fill the void where his soul should be." I took another step. "You thought you were a viper, didn't you?" I mocked. "You thought you would wait in the grass, wait for the divorce, then move in and claim the spoils. You thought Marcus was the one with the gold, but you didn't look closely enough at the shine." Kendra started to drag the suitcases down the stairs. Thump, thump, thump. The sound was a pathetic imitation of the power my father had shown. "Outside, I'm leaving," Shay said. Her voice was shaking. "I don't want anything to do with this family. You're all crazy. Marcus was right about you. You're cold. You're heartless." She reached the bottom of the stairs. She tried to push past me. I didn't move. I stood like a pillar of granite. Darius stepped in front of the door. His massive frame blocked the light. The shadow he cast swallowed Kendra whole. "You're not going out the front door, Kendra," I said. My voice was a whisper, but it carried the weight of a sentence. "The front door is for guests. You are an intruder." I pointed toward the back of the house. "Toward the service entrance, you will use the mudroom," I said. "The same door the staff uses to take out the trash. It's only fitting." Kendra's face twisted with rage. She looked at the suitcases. Then she looked at the 6 guards standing in the foyer. She knew she had no leverage. She knew the game was over. "Fine," she hissed. "Keep your house. Keep your money. I have enough in these bags to start over. Marcus gave me jewelry. He gave me cash. You can't take those back." She turned and began to drag her bags toward the back of the house. I followed her. I wanted to see the light leave her eyes. We reached the mudroom. It was a small, functional space. It smelled of floor wax and rain. Kendra kicked the back door open. She looked out into the gray, wet afternoon. The pickup truck with Marcus was already gone. In its place was a second truck, even older, even rustier. "There's your carriage, Kendra." I said. She turned to look at me one last time. She tried to summon a look of triumph. "Least I had him when he was at his best," she sneered. "He never looked at you the way he looked at me." I smiled. It was a slow, predatory movement of my lips. "He looked at you like a commodity," Kendra said. "And like any commodity, you just lost your value." "Did you check the jewelry boxes before you packed them?" Kendra froze. Her hand went to the large velvet box tucked under her arm. "What are you talking about?" "Marcus has been under investigation for months," I said. "The audit team didn't just look at the company books. They looked at his personal spending. Every piece of jewelry he bought you was purchased with embezzled funds." I stepped closer to her. The smell of the rain was coming in through the open door. "The police are waiting at the motel, Kendra," I whispered. "They have a list of every asset Marcus bought with stolen money. If you walk out that door with those bags, you aren't a mistress anymore. You're an accomplice." I watched the blood drain from her face. She looked at the suitcases. They were full of stolen goods. They were anchors that would pull her straight to a cell. "You're lying," she stammered. "Try me," I said. "Walk out. Take the bags. See how far that rusty truck gets before the blue lights appear?" Kendra looked at the suitcases. Then she looked at the mud. She realized the gold had turned to lead. With a scream of pure, frustrated rage, she dropped the bags. She dropped the jewelry box. She didn't even look back. She ran out into the rain, her high heels splashing in the puddles. She climbed into the cab of the rusty truck and slammed the door. The truck pulled away, leaving a cloud of exhaust and the sound of a woman sobbing. I stood in the doorway. I looked at the two suitcases sitting on the floor. My stolen life returned. I turned to Darius. "Burn them," I said. "The bags, Ms. Hayes. The bags. The clothes. The robes." I said everything she touched. I want it turned to ash. I want this house to smell like nothing but rain and sandalwood again. I walked back into the kitchen. I poured myself a glass of water. My hands were perfectly steady. I looked out the window. The rain was stopping, but as I watched, I saw a small black envelope on the counter. It was addressed to Marcus. I opened it. Inside was a photo. A sonogram. The micro cliffhanger hit me like a physical blow. The Viper had left, but she had left a part of her behind. I looked at the image. The shadow of a child, Darius. I called out. My voice was different now. It was cold. "Yes, Ms. Hayes. Find out which clinic Kendra has been visiting," I said. "And find out if Marcus knows." The game wasn't over. It had just changed levels.0. That is the sound of a life ending. Marcus sat on the edge of the stained motel bed. The springs groaned under his weight. A sharp, metallic grating sound. The air in the room was stagnant. It smelled of industrial bleach, old cigarettes, and the cold, damp smell of a basement. The Starlight Inn was not a place for a CEO. It was a place for people who had run out of road. Marcus opened his wallet. The leather was soft, expensive. It still smelled of the boutique in Milan where I had bought it for him. Inside, his cards were lined up like soldiers, platinum, gold, black. They glittered under the buzzing yellow light of the overhead bulb. He felt a small spark of hope. "They can't take everything," he whispered to the peeling wallpaper. "I have my personal accounts, the offshore fund, the emergency stash, 5 miles away, in a room of glass and cold steel." I sat at a long table. My father stood behind me. His shadow was long, dark, imposing. The air in the black room was silent. It smelled of ozone and the sharp, electric hum of high-speed servers. 10 analysts sat with their laptops open. Their faces were illuminated by the blue light of the screens. They looked like ghosts. "Is he online?" I asked. My voice was a low, cinematic rumble. Silas, the lead auditor, adjusted his glasses. The light from his monitor reflected in the lenses. He just tried to check his balance from a motel Wi-Fi. "He is at the Starlight Inn, room 12. Do it, I said. My finger hovered over the enter key. A single stroke. That was all it took to erase a man. The analysts began to type. Their fingers moved like spiders on a digital web. One by one, the icons on the screen turned from green to a deep blood red. Global freeze. Assets locked. Accounts terminated. Marcus Wallace was no longer a millionaire. He was a glitch in the machine. Marcus walked into the diner next to the motel. The Rusty Spoon. It smelled of frying grease and burnt coffee. The neon sign outside buzzed with a low, irritating frequency. It cast a flickering pink light over his disheveled face. He was still wearing his ruined suit. The mud from my driveway had dried into a gray crust on his knees. He sat at a booth. The vinyl was cracked. It bit into his thighs. He ordered the largest breakfast on the menu: steak, eggs, hash browns. He felt powerful again. He thought money could fix the shame of the morning. He thought a full stomach would help him plan his next move. When the check came, he pulled out his main card. The black one. The card that used to open every door in the city. The clerk was a young woman with tired eyes. She tapped her nails on the counter. Click, click, click. Marcus handed her the card with a smirk, a ghost of his former arrogance. The clerk slid the card through the machine. Marcus held his breath. His lungs felt like they were full of lead. He watched the small scratched screen of the card reader. The word processing danced in front of his eyes. It was a taunt, a slow, digital torture. He looked at the girl. She wasn't looking at him. She was looking at the clock. Then the machine beeped. A sharp, high-pitched sound that set Marcus's teeth on edge. Declined, the clerk said. Her voice was flat, indifferent. Marcus felt a drop of cold sweat slide down his spine. It was a freezing electric shiver. Run it again? He hissed. It's a corporate card. There is a $500,000 limit. Your machine is broken. He pushed the card back toward her. The plastic felt hot, like a coal. He watched her slide it through again. The diner seemed to go silent. The man in the trucker hat at the counter stopped chewing. The sound of the sizzling grill seemed miles away. The red text appeared on the screen. Declined. Error. 403. Account frozen. The realization hit Marcus like a physical blow to the solar plexus. He felt the air leave his body. His vision tunneled. The edges of the diner became a blur of brown and pink. He could hear a ringing in his ears, a high, piercing note. It was the sound of his status evaporating. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. His fingers were clumsy. They felt like sausages. He opened his banking app. He entered his biometric ID. The screen spun. A circle of white light. Waiting, waiting. Then the message appeared. Account status frozen. Investigation pending. He tapped the balance tab. He prayed for a glitch. He prayed for a mistake. But the number was there. A single round zero, surrounded by a sea of empty white. Space. $0. He felt a sudden sharp nausea. The world tilted. He looked at his manicured hands. They were the hands of a CEO, but they were trembling like the hands of a leaf in a storm. He felt a sudden, intense cold. It started in his feet and moved up his legs. It was the feeling of his foundation dissolving. He wasn't just broke. He was erased. Do you have another way to pay, sir? The clerk asked. Her voice was louder now. Other customers were turning their heads. Marcus felt the weight of their judgment. He felt naked. He felt like the trash bags he had thrown onto the lawn. He reached into his wallet and pulled out a wad of cash. It was all he had. $20. The breakfast was $25. This is all I have, he whispered. His voice was a broken thread. The clerk took the 20. She looked at it like it was a used tissue. You're $5 short, she said. Marcus looked at her. He wanted to scream. He wanted to tell her who he was. He wanted to tell her he was the king of Wallace's logistics. But he knew the lie wouldn't stick. He looked at the gold watch on his wrist. Take this, he said. He began to unbuckle the strap. It's a Patek Philippe. It's worth $30,000. The clerk shook her head. I don't want your watch. I want $5. Or I call the police. Marcus froze. The word police made his heart stop. He thought of the audit. He thought of the embezzled funds. He thought of the Ferrari. He realized he couldn't afford to have any attention on him. He turned and walked out of the diner. Leaving his breakfast on the table, he walked back into the cold night. The rain had turned into a freezing mist. He stood in the parking lot of the Starlight Inn. He felt the hunger in his stomach. It was a sharp, gnawing pain, but the pain in his chest was worse. It was the sensation of his world collapsing into a black hole. He looked at his phone again. A notification popped up. An email from the board of directors. My father's board. Notice of termination for cause. Fraud, embezzlement, moral turpitude. He was no longer a CEO. He was an unemployed felon with a dead phone and a ruined suit in the glass office. Silas looked up from his monitor. The motel reservation has been canceled. He said the payment was flagged as fraudulent. They are going to evict him in 10 minutes. I nodded. I felt a cold, clean satisfaction. It wasn't revenge. It was justice. I looked at the sonogram of the child Kendra was carrying. The child Marcus didn't know about. Not yet. Marcus reached the door of his room. He saw his boxers sitting on the sidewalk. They were soaked. The bottom of one box had given way. His expensive silk shirts were spilled in the mud. He stood there, looking at his ruin. Then he saw a black car pull up. It wasn't the Rolls-Royce, it was a police cruiser. The blue and red lights began to dance against the wet pavement. Marcus didn't run. He couldn't move. He felt the cold steel of his future closing in. But as the officer stepped out, Marcus's phone vibrated in his pocket. One last time. A final message from a number he didn't recognize. I know about the baby, Marcus, and I'm coming for everything else. Marcus looked at the screen. Then he looked at the handcuffs. He realized then, the self-made man was just a man who had made himself a target. Grief is a luxury. I am out of time. Marcus thought he left a ghost behind. He thought a divorce and a pile of trash bags would break me. He expected me to crawl into a dark room and cry for a man who never existed. He was wrong. Dead wrong. Tears do not build empires. And they certainly do not deliver justice today. I do not mourn the past. Today, I execute the future. 5 a.m. The sun has not yet touched the horizon. The air in my bedroom is cold, still. It smells of the sandalwood candle I lit to anchor my thoughts. I do not look at the empty side of the bed. It is just space. Empty. Like Marcus's promises. I move to the mirror. My reflection is a stranger. But I like her better. The soft edges of the housewife are gone. My skin feels tight. My eyes are clear, sharp, glacial. I pull my hair back into a low, tight bun. Every strand is in place. Every movement is a calculation. This is not makeup. It is war paint. I apply a dark matte, red lipstick. It is the color of a closing bell. I walk to the closet. It is no longer full of the floral dresses Marcus liked. I reach for the charcoal power suit. The fabric is heavy, expensive. It feels like armor. I slide the jacket over my shoulders. The structure of the pads makes me stand taller. I fasten the gold cufflinks my father gave me. They click with a cold final sound. I am no longer Simone the victim. I am Simone the matriarch. I walk down the stairs. The house is silent. The only sound is the rhythmic, sharp strike of my heels on the marble. Click, click, click. Each step is a second Marcus loses. I enter the kitchen. I do not make tea. I drink a double shot of espresso. Black, bitter. It tastes like reality. I feel the caffeine hit my bloodstream. A jolt of electric focus. The Rolls-Royce is waiting in the driveway. Darius stands by the door. He does not smile. He simply nods. He sees the change. He smells the ozone of my ambition. I step into the back seat. The door closes with a heavy, vault-like thud. The world outside is a blur of gray and morning mist. I open my laptop. The blue light illuminates my face. I am not looking at wedding photos. I am looking at spreadsheets. I am looking at the red lines of Marcus's fraud. I am looking at the names of the board members who enabled him. I am looking at the weak points of his legacy. By the time we've reached the city, I've already fired 3 people via encrypted email. The elevator doors of the Haze Global Tower open with a soft, expensive chime. The air in the lobby is different today. It is charged. The staff stops moving. They see me. They see the charcoal suit. They see the way I do not look at the floor. I walk toward the private executive elevator. My pace is steady. My breathing is rhythmic. I arrive at the penthouse floor. The boardroom doors are heavy oak. They stand between me and the men who used to laugh at Marcus's jokes about his boring wife. I push them open. The room is full of smoke and the smell of expensive coffee. 10 men sit around a table of polished mahogany. They look up. Their faces are a mixture of confusion and suppressed laughter. They think I am here to collect my things. They think I am here to cry. Gentlemen, I say. My voice is a low cinematic rumble. It cuts through their murmurs like a blade through silk. The chairman, a man named Holloway who used to buy Marcus cigars, clears his throat. Simone, he says. His voice is patronizing. We are in the middle of a strategy meeting. Perhaps you should wait in the lobby. I do not move. I walk to the head of the table, the chair Marcus used to sit in. I pull it out. The sound of the legs scraping against the floor is a warning. I sit down. I lean forward. I interlock my fingers. The strategy meeting has changed. I say, because the strategy has changed. I open the leather folder on the table. I slide a document toward Holloway. He picks it up. He reads the first line. His face goes from a healthy tan to a sickly grayish white. This is an emergency proxy. I announce to the room, the Matriarch's trust has exercised its right of repossession. As of 5 minutes ago, Marcus Wallace is no longer the CEO. He is a persona non grata. And as the primary trustee, I am now the acting chairperson of Wallace's Logistics. Silence. The kind of silence that happens before a building collapses. I can hear the hum of the air conditioning. I can hear the ticking of the clock on the wall. I can smell the sweat breaking out on Holloway's forehead, but Marcus. Holloway stammers. He is the face of the company. Marcus is a thief. I say my voice is quiet, but it fills the room. He is currently sitting in a 1-star motel with $0 in his account. He is a ghost. I am the reality. I stand up. I walk to the glass wall. I look out over the city. The skyscrapers look like silver needles reaching for the sky. This city belongs to the Hayes family. It always has. Marcus was just a tenant. I turn back to the board. Their faces are different now. The suppressed laughter is gone. It has been replaced by a cold primal fear. They realize that the boss babe trope is not a movie. It is their new reality. I want an audit of every expense account. I command. I want a list of every contract Marcus signed in the last 12 months. And I want the keys to the private jet revoked. Today, we are not just running a company. We are cleaning a house. I move to the screen at the front of the room. I pull up a map of the market. I point to Marcus's biggest competitor, Apex Shipping. By the end of the week, we will acquire them, I say. We will strip Marcus's name from the building. We will rebrand as Hayes Global. Wallace Logistics will be a footnote in a history book about failure. The room is a blur of activity now. The analysts are typing. The lawyers are dialing phones. I stand in the center of the chaos. I am the eye of the storm. I feel a physical sensation of power. It is a warm, humming vibration in my chest. It is better than love. It is better than safety. It is control. I spend the next 6 hours in back-to-back meetings. I fire the head of marketing who helped Marcus hide Kendra's expenses. I promote the young analyst who was too afraid to speak up about the fraud. I sign 42 documents. Each one is a nail in Marcus's professional coffin. I do not eat lunch. I drink more espresso. I feel sharp. My mind is a high-definition screen. I see every move 3 steps ahead. By 4 p.m., the rumors have reached the street. The stock price of Wallace Logistics is fluctuating, but the Hayes name is stabilizing it. The market knows. The Matriarch is back. I walk back to my office. My new office. It is the one Marcus used to keep locked. I look at the desk. I see a framed photo of us. It was taken in Paris. We were smiling. We looked happy. I do not feel sad. I do not feel a pang of nostalgia. I pick up the frame. I look at Marcus's face. I remember the way he called me dead weight. I drop the frame into the heavy metal trash can. The sound of the glass shattering is the most beautiful music I have heard all day. I sit at the desk. I pick up the phone. I dial my father's direct line. It is done. I say my father's voice is a low, satisfied growl. Well done, Simone. Now, are you ready for the gala? I look at the sonogram sitting on my desk. The one I found in the kitchen. The one Kendra left behind. I look at the shadow of the child. A child that represents the final, messy thread of Marcus's betrayal. I am ready. I say, but we are going to need a bigger screen. I hang up the phone. I look out at the setting sun. The sky is a deep, bruised purple. It looks like a throne. The phoenix has risen. But I am not here to fly. I am here to burn every bridge Marcus thought he could use to get back. But as I prepare to leave, Darius enters the room. His face is tense. Ms. Hayes, he says. Marcus just tried to call the office from a payphone. He says he has something you need to hear. I look at the shattered photo in the trash. Let him talk to the legal team. I say I have a party to attend. I walk out of the office. My heels click on the floor. A drumbeat of war. The gala is tonight. And Marcus is about to find out that a phoenix doesn't just rise, it destroys everything in its path. The grand ballroom was a sea of crystal and lies. 800 guests. The elite of the tri-state area. They stood in clusters, sipping Roederer crystal from narrow flutes. The air was heavy. It smelled of white lilies, expensive wax candles, and the sharp, cold scent of old money. A string quartet played a Vivaldi concerto in the corner. The sound was a polite, constant hum. It masked the whispers of people who had spent the last week gossiping about the fall of Toko, Marcus Wallace. I stood on the elevated stage, behind a lectern of polished mahogany. The Hayes Foundation logo was projected onto a massive digital screen behind me. It was a golden phoenix. Its wings spread wide, symbolic, powerful, unmoving. I wore a floor-length gown of midnight blue silk. It felt like a second skin, heavy, cool, expensive. My father sat in the front row. His charcoal suit was flawless. Beside him sat my mother. Her pearls caught the light of the chandeliers. They looked at me with a pride that felt like armor. I was halfway through my speech. I was talking about legacy. I was talking about the dignity of the people we serve. My voice was a low, cinematic rumble. It filled the room. The audience was silent. They were captivated by the boss babe who had turned a family tragedy into a corporate takeover. Then the back doors of the ballroom flew open. The sound was a violent, metallic crash. It shattered the polite atmosphere like a hammer through a mirror. The music stopped. 800 heads turned in unison. A synchronized movement of surprise. Marcus stood in the doorway. He was a nightmare in a room of dreams. He was wearing the same charcoal suit from the day of the divorce. But it was no longer a suit. It was a rag. It was stained with mud and dried sweat. His hair was matted. His beard was a patchy, gray mess. He smelled even from 30 feet away. I could feel the stench of the street following him into the hall. He smelled of industrial bleach, despair, and the sour scent of a man who had not eaten in days. "Simone," he screamed. The word was a jagged, raw sound. It tore through the silence of the ballroom. Marcus began to run down the center aisle. His shoes were scuffed. The heels clicking in an uneven, frantic rhythm. Dodoris and the security team moved to intercept him. Their suits were a black wall of muscle. But I raised my hand. A small, precise movement. "Let him speak," said into the microphone. My voice was calm. It was the calmness of a deep, dark ocean. The guards stepped back. Marcus reached the edge of the stage. He was panting. His eyes were bloodshot. They were wide with a terrifying, manic energy. He snatched a wireless microphone from a nearby table. A loud, high-pitched squeal of feedback echoed through the hall. Many guests covered their ears. Their faces were twisted in a mixture of disgust and fascination. "Don't listen to her," Marcus bellowed. His voice was amplified, distorted. "This woman is a hypocrite. She stands here talking about heart, but she has a block of ice in her chest." He turned to the audience. He held out his shaking hands. He looked like a prophet of ruin. "Look at me," he cried. "I was the CEO of Wallace Logistics. I was her husband. We shared a home. We shared a life. And the moment I made a mistake, the moment I needed my wife, she and her father stripped me of everything. They froze my accounts. They threw me into the mud. They turned me into a beggar while they celebrate their wealth." A murmur moved through the crowd. It was a low hissing sound. I saw Mrs. Sterling whispering to her husband. I saw the reporters at the back of the room raising their cameras. The flashes began to pop. A series of white, blinding bursts. "She is a monster." Marcus sobbed. He was a master of the victim role. Tears began to run down his dirty face. They left tracks in the grime. "She left me with $0. She left me homeless. Is this the woman you want leading your foundation? A woman who destroys the man she promised to love?" The cringe was palpable. It was a thick, suffocating tension. The elite guests looked at their shoes. They looked at their champagne. They felt the discomfort of a private drama becoming a public spectacle. For a moment, the narrative shifted. I could feel the doubt in the room. They saw a broken man and a powerful woman. In the court of public opinion, power is often seen as cruelty. Marcus looked at me. A flash of triumph crossed his face. He thought he had me. He thought he had tainted the Hayes name forever. "What do you have to say for yourself, Simone?" he sneered. He took a step toward the stage. "How do you explain the fact that your own husband is eating out of trash cans while you wear $1 million in diamonds?" I didn't blink. I didn't step back. I looked at Marcus with an icy, detached pity. It was the look of a scientist observing a dying cell. "Are you finished, Marcus?" I asked. My voice was perfectly steady. "The truth is never finished," he yelled. I looked back at the tech booth. I nodded once. A slow, deliberate signal. "I agree," I said. "The truth is absolute. And since you want to discuss our marriage, let's look at the foundation of it." The lights in the ballroom dimmed. The digital screen behind me flickered. The golden phoenix vanished. In its place, a high-definition video began to play. The image was crystal clear. The sound was crisp. It was a recording from the interior of the red Ferrari. The one Marcus thought was his trophy. The one he had used to take Kendra to the city. The screen showed Marcus behind the wheel. He looked polished, arrogant. He was laughing. Beside him sat Kendra. She was wearing a dress I recognized. "My dress, I'm telling you, Kendra, it's almost over." Marcus's voice boomed through the ballroom speakers. It was loud, clear, stripped of the victim's sob. "Simone is a bore. She's a ghost in that house. I only married her for the Hayes legacy. The old man is a walking heart attack. Once he's gone, I take the estate. I take the company. And you and I take the private jet to the islands." A collective gasp moved through the ballroom. It was the sound of 800 hearts stopping at once. The video continued. Kendra laughed, a sharp, metallic sound. "But she loves you, Marcus. Doesn't she suspect anything?" Marcus scoffed. The sound was a dry, cruel rasp. She loves the idea of me. She's too stupid to see the truth. She's just the key to the vault. I've been siphoning the company funds into the offshore account for 18 months. By the time she realizes the marriage is over, the vault will be empty and the key will be at the bottom of the ocean. The video froze. The frame was a close-up of Marcus's face. He was smiling, a predatory, greedy grin. The silence that followed was absolute. It was a tomb. The air in the room felt frozen. I could smell the ozone from the large screen. I could hear Marcus's ragged breathing over the sound system. He was still on stage, but he was no longer a victim. He was a thief caught in the middle of a heist. The dirty, grimy mess of a man looked at his own image on the screen. He looked at his own confession. His mouth worked, but no sound came out. He looked like a fish gasping for air on a dry dock. The audit team found this recording on the car's internal server. Marcus. I said, my voice was a low, cinematic rumble. It carried to every corner of the room. The Ferrari you bought with embezzled funds was also recording your every word. You thought you were a king, but you were just a common criminal with a loud mouth. I looked at the audience. The doubt was gone. The doubt had been replaced by a white-hot primal rage. I saw my father stand up. His presence was a pillar of charcoal and granite. This man did not just betray a wife, I said. He betrayed a company. He betrayed his employees. And he betrayed the very idea of trust. He did not come here today because he is a victim. He came here today to try and steal one last thing. My reputation. I turned to Marcus. I stepped off the lectern and walked toward him. My midnight blue silk hissed against the floor. But you can't steal what you never understood, Marcus, I whispered. You thought the Hayes family was built on money. You were wrong. It was built on character, and that is something you will never, ever possess. I signaled to Darius. Remove him. I said Darius and 3 guards moved in. They didn't use the polite, professional grip of a security detail. They grabbed Marcus by the arms and the collar of his ruined suit. They lifted him off the ground. No. Marcus screamed. But the scream was weak. It was the sound of a man who realized the game was over. Simone, you can't do this. I have rights. I have. They dragged him down the center aisle. The same aisle he had run down minutes ago in a desperate attempt for glory. The guests parted like the Red Sea. They didn't look at him with pity. They looked at him with revulsion. Some even turned their backs as he passed. They reached the grand doors. Darius didn't just open them. He shoved Marcus through them. Marcus hit the marble floor of the lobby with a dull, heavy thud. The doors slammed shut. The sound of the lock clicking was like a sentence. I stood in the center of the stage. The light of the chandeliers caught the midnight blue silk. I looked at the audience. I didn't say anything for a long moment. I let the weight of the justice settle in the room. I picked up my glass of champagne from the lectern. I raised it. To the truth. I said, to the truth. The room roared back. The music resumed. The string quartet played a triumphant, fast movement. The gala continued. But the atmosphere had changed. I was no longer just the heiress. I was the matriarch. I walked off the stage. My father met me at the bottom. He didn't say a word. He just kissed my forehead. His skin was warm, steady. But as I moved through the crowd, accepting the congratulations of the elite, Darius leaned in and whispered into my ear. Hayes, the police are waiting in the lobby. Marcus is in handcuffs. But he said one more thing before they took him away. I stopped. I looked at the bubbles in my champagne. What did he say, Darius? He said the child Kendra is carrying isn't his. I felt a sudden, sharp chill. The micro cliffhanger of a secret that Marcus was only just realizing. Find out whose it is, I said, and find out what Marcus is planning to do with that information from his cell. The gala was a victory, but the war for the Hayes legacy was far from over. The marble is cold. It is the coldest thing I have ever felt. I am on my knees. My joints ache with a dull, constant throb. My hands are no longer manicured. They are no longer soft. The skin is cracked and red. My fingernails are stained with the gray chemical residue of 100 industrial soaps. I do not wear a charcoal power suit. I wear a uniform of cheap, itchy blue polyester. It smells of ammonia, sweat, and the bitter scent of failure. Mopping the lobby of the Hayes Global Tower. It is the same floor I used to walk across like a god. I remember the sound of my Italian leather shoes clicking on this very stone. I remember the way the junior analysts would look at the floor when I passed. I remember the feeling of owning the air in this room. Now, I am a ghost in a blue jumpsuit. I am part of the background. I am the man people step around so they do not get their shoes wet. The bucket is heavy. The water inside is gray and murky. It sloshes with a rhythmic, wet sound. Each time I plunge the mop into the water, I feel the weight of my sins. I am mopping the exact spot where I once stood and laughed at Simone. I am cleaning the very tile where I thought I had built a kingdom of sand. The air in the lobby is sterile. It smells of expensive floor wax and the faint high-end aroma of the lilies in the grand vases. It is the scent of a world that has locked me out. I look at my reflection in the polished marble. My face is older. My eyes are sunken. There is a permanent gray shadow of exhaustion under my skin. I do not look like a CEO. I look like a warning. I reach a stubborn stain near the executive elevator. It is a drop of coffee, dried hard. I have to scrub it. I press the rag against the floor and move my hand in a tight, painful circle. My shoulder stings. My back feels like it is made of rusted iron. This is the janitor's prayer. I pray for the day to end. I pray for a meal that doesn't come from a microwave. I pray for a life I can no longer remember. Then the lobby goes silent. It is not a true silence. The city is still humming outside the glass doors. The revolving doors are still spinning. But the atmosphere changes. It is a shift in the pressure, a sudden, sharp ozone of power. I know that feeling. I have felt it before. The executive elevator chimes. A soft golden note that echoes through the high ceilings. I do not look up. I keep my head down. I keep scrubbing the coffee stain. I am a professional now. A professional at being invisible. But I can hear the footsteps, click, click, click. The sound is a drum beat. It is a fast, triumphant, rhythmic strike of high heels on the marble. It is a sound I used to know by heart. But it is different now. It is heavier, more certain. It is the sound of a woman who owns the earth she walks on. I see the shoes first. They are designer. Midnight blue silk. They stop inches away from my bucket. They are flawless. Not a single scratch. Not a speck of dust. They represent everything I lost. They represent a reality that is now 1,000,000 miles away. My heart begins to pound. A slow, heavy thud in my chest. I can smell her. She doesn't smell like the cheap floral perfume Kendra used. She smells of sandalwood, success, and a clean, cold morning air. I slowly lift my head. Just an inch. Simone is standing there. She looks radiant. Her skin is glowing under the warm light of the chandeliers. She is wearing a cream-colored coat that looks like it was woven from clouds. Her hair's a dark, perfect wave. She is beautiful. But it is a dangerous beauty. It is the beauty of a storm that has passed and left the world clean. She is not alone. Beside her stands a man. He is tall, broad-shouldered. He wears a suit that fits him like a second skin. He has his arm around her waist. A protective, loving gesture. Simone leans into him. She looks happy. Truly happy. A version of her I never allowed to exist when she was with me. She is visibly pregnant. A soft, round curve under the cream fabric. She carries the future of the Hayes legacy inside her. A legacy I tried to steal. A legacy I thought I could replace with greed. I wait for her to see me. I wait for the moment of recognition. I want her to look at me. I want her to see the blue jumpsuit. I want her to see the gray water in the bucket. I want her to see the man who called her trash scrubbing the floor she owns. I want her to scream. I want her to mock me. I want any emotion at all. Even hate is better than this nothingness. But she doesn't look down. She is talking to the man. Her voice is a low, rich, melodic sound. She is laughing. A genuine light. Laugh that cuts through my soul like a razor. She is discussing a trip to the coast. She is discussing the new nursery. She is discussing a life that has absolutely no room for a man named Marcus Wallace. I am a potted plant. I am a pillar. I am a piece of the architecture. To her, I am not even a person. I am just the man mopping the floor. She starts to walk past me. The hem of her coat brushes against the edge of my bucket. The fabric is so close I could reach out and touch it. But my hands are dirty. My hands are stained. If I touched her, I would leave a mark of my own ruin. She stops. My breath catches in my throat. I feel a sudden sharp hope. Maybe she remembers. Maybe she is going to say my name. Maybe she is going to give me one last look of contempt. She reaches into her small designer. Clutch, her fingers move with a slow, elegant grace. She pulls something out. She doesn't turn. Her head. She doesn't break her conversation with her husband. She simply extends her hand over my bucket. Her fingers open. A single copper penny falls. It hits the gray, murky water with a small, sharp plink. The sound is louder than a gunshot in the silent lobby. I watch the penny sink. It disappears into the gray clouds of the mop water. It settles at the bottom, a tiny, worthless piece of metal. That is my value. A single cent. Simone doesn't wait to see it land. She doesn't check to see if I noticed. She continues walking, her heels clicking a victory lap on the marble I just cleaned. The revolving doors spin. She steps out into the bright, golden afternoon sun. The doors click shut behind her. The silence returns. I am left on my knees. I look at the gray water. I see the penny at the bottom of the bucket. It is the ultimate sign of her total indifference. She didn't give me $1. She didn't give me 100. She gave me a penny. Because that is all I am worth to a woman who has forgotten I ever existed. I remember my own voice. Come pick up this useless trash. The words echo in my mind. A curse that has finally come home. I am the trash. I am the waste. I am the man who cleans the messes of the people who actually matter. I plunge the mop back into the bucket. The water splashes, hitting my face. It is cold, gray. It tastes like chemicals and salt. My tears mix with the ammonia. I start to mop again, back and forth, back and forth. I am scrubbing the spot where she stood. But no matter how hard I scrub, I cannot remove the stain of what I did. I am trapped in this lobby, trapped in this uniform, trapped in a prayer that will never be answered. The sun begins to set. The light in the lobby turns a deep, bruised purple. I finish the floor. I drag the heavy bucket toward the service closet. I am tired. My bones feel like lead. But as I reach the closet, Darius is standing there. He looks at me with an icy, detached pity. He hands me a small, white envelope. What is this? I ask. My voice is a hoarse, broken. Rasp. Your final check. Darius says, the company has decided to automate the cleaning staff. We no longer need your services. He looks at the lobby one last time, and Marcus. He says, yes. Kendra just gave birth. Says, his voice is a low, cold knife. The child is healthy, but the DNA test came back. I feel the floor tilt. I feel the air leave my lungs. It isn't yours. Darius says, He turns and walks away. His footsteps are silent. I stand in the dark service closet. I hold the white envelope. I look at the empty lobby. The game is over. The self-made man is truly alone. If you believe that karma always finds its way, write the word karma in the comments. I want to know who stayed until the very end of the Matriarch's journey. Tell me, did Marcus get what he deserved? Or was the penny too kind? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. Because the next story of betrayal and justice is already being written, and you do not want to be the one left in the dark.